Have you ever looked at your life and realized that you have fewer friends than you did 10 years ago? Not because you wanted fewer friends, not because you stopped caring about people, but simply because life changed. I think this is something many adults experience, but very few people talk about openly. When we're children, friendship feels effortless. You meet someone at school, play together for a few days, and suddenly they're your best friend. There are no complicated schedules, no work meetings, no family responsibilities, no financial stress. Friendship just happens naturally, but adulthood feels different. As we get older, many of us notice something surprising. Making friends becomes harder, keeping friends becomes harder. And sometimes we even start feeling lonely in ways we never expected. Yeah. Today, we're going to talk about why that happens, why friendships change, why some friendships disappear, why loneliness can appear even when we're surrounded by people, and most importantly, how we can build meaningful friendships as adults.
I love this topic because it's incredibly relatable. Almost everyone experiences it at some point. I remember when I was younger, I never thought about friendship. I never worried about it. Friends were simply part of everyday life. School created friendships. Sports created friendships. Neighborhoods created friendships. Everything around me made it easy to connect with people. But then adulthood arrived, and suddenly things felt different. One of my biggest surprises as an adult was realizing how much effort friendships actually require. When I moved to a new city in my late 20s, I assumed making friends would be easy. After all, I had spent my entire life making friends. How difficult could it be? Well, much more difficult than I imagined. I knew people. I worked with people. I talked to people. But genuine friendship was much harder to find. For the first time in my life, I understood what loneliness really felt like. Not extreme loneliness, not complete isolation, but that feeling of wanting deeper connections. The feeling of wanting someone to call on a random Saturday afternoon just to talk. That experience taught me that friendship is one of the most valuable things we have. And it's something we often take for granted until it becomes harder to find.
That's such an important point. I think many adults experience exactly what you're describing. They aren't completely alone. They're surrounded by coworkers, neighbors, people at the gym, people online. But meaningful connection feels different, and meaningful connection is often what we're really searching for. I remember being 20 years old. Every weekend was full of plans. Someone was always organizing something: dinner, movies, road trips, sports. There was always activity. It's there was always someone to call. But over time, things changed. People moved away. People started careers. When people got married, people had children. People became busy. And slowly, without even realizing it, our social lives started looking very different.
And that's completely normal. But nobody prepares us for it. Nobody sits us down and says, one day your friendships will change. One day you'll have to work harder to stay connected. One day you'll need to intentionally create opportunities for friendship. Those are lessons many people discover on their own. And sometimes those discoveries can feel surprising or even painful.
Exactly. If you've ever wondered why friendships feel different now than they did when you were younger, this conversation is for you. Let's begin with one of the biggest reasons friendship becomes more difficult in adulthood. Everyone is busy.
I truly believe this is one of the biggest reasons adult friendships become more complicated. Everyone is busy. And I don't mean busy in a casual way. I mean genuinely overwhelmed sometimes. Think about the average adult. Most people wake up early, they go to work, they manage responsibilities, they pay bills, they take care of their homes, Some are raising children, others are studying, many are dealing with financial pressure, and by the end of the day, they feel exhausted. In that situation, maintaining friendships can become challenging, not because people don't care, but because energy becomes limited. I remember a period of my life when I was working long hours every week. I would leave home before sunrise and return home after dark. By Friday evening, I was completely exhausted. Friends would invite me to events, they would invite me to dinner, and honestly, sometimes all I wanted to do was stay home and rest. At first, I felt guilty about that. I thought I was becoming a bad friend, but eventually I realized something important. Many of my friends were experiencing exactly the same thing. We weren't avoiding each other. We were simply trying to survive busy periods of life.
That's such a common experience. I remember one friendship in particular. We had been close friends for years. When we were younger, we saw each other constantly. Then adulthood arrived. We both started working full time. We had different schedules, like different responsibilities, like different priorities. Like as at first we tried to meet every week, then every 2 weeks, then once a month. Eventually we reached a point where several months could pass without seeing each other, and honestly, it scared me. I thought the friendship was disappearing, or I thought maybe we were growing apart. But one day we finally met for coffee, and something interesting happened. Within 5 minutes, it felt exactly the same as before. The connection was still there. The friendship was still strong. Life had simply become more complicated. That experience completely changed the way I view adult friendships. Sometimes friendship isn't measured by how often you talk. Sometimes it's measured by how deeply you care.
I completely agree. I think many adults accidentally create unrealistic expectations for friendship. We compare adult friendships to teenage friendships, but they're very different stages of life. When you're 16 years old, you might spend 6 hours every day with your friends. When you're 35, that's simply unrealistic for most people. Life has changed. Responsibilities have changed. Time has changed. The friendship can still be meaningful. It just looks different.
And I think that's an important lesson. Adult friendships often require more patience, more understanding, more flexibility. Sometimes your friend doesn't answer your message immediately, not because they don't care, but because they're busy. Sometimes plans get canceled, not because the friendship isn't important, but because life happens. The older I get, the more I realize that friendship isn't about constant communication. It's about mutual understanding. It's about knowing that even when life becomes chaotic, the connection still exists. And honestly, that's a beautiful thing because it allows friendships to survive through different seasons of life.
Exactly. And maybe that's one of the biggest truths about adulthood. Friendships don't necessarily become weaker. They simply become different. And learning to accept that difference is one of the most important parts of growing older.
One of the hardest lessons to accept about adulthood is that friendships naturally change. And when I say naturally, I really mean it. Most of the time, friendships don't end because of an argument. They don't end because someone did something wrong. They don't end because people suddenly stop caring about each other. Instead, they change slowly, almost so slowly that you barely notice it happening. I remember one friend I was incredibly close to during college. We talked almost every day. We knew everything about each other's lives. If something exciting happened, he was the first person I called. If something difficult happened, he was also the first person I called. For several years, I honestly believed that friendship would always stay exactly the same. But after graduation, our lives started moving in different directions. He moved to another city. I stayed where I was. He started a new career. I focused on different goals. At first, we still talked regularly. Then it became once a week, then every few weeks, then every few months. And one day I realized something surprising. The friendship wasn't gone, but it had changed. And for a while that made me sad, because I was comparing the friendship we had in the present to the friendship we had in the past. Instead of appreciating what still existed, I was focusing on what had changed. I think many adults experience something similar.
I definitely relate to that. I think one of the most emotional parts of growing older is realizing that some friendships belong to a specific chapter of your life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can feel strange. I remember having a friend when I was younger who felt like a sister to me. We spent countless hours together. We shared secrets. We talked about our dreams. We imagined what our future would look like. At that time, I couldn't imagine my life without her. Then life happened. We both became adults. We pursued different careers. We moved to different places. We met different people. And little by little, our lives stopped overlapping. What's interesting is that there was never a dramatic ending. No argument, and no betrayal, no big conflict. Life simply pulled us in different directions. For years, I thought something was wrong. I thought friendships were supposed to stay exactly the same forever. But now, I see things differently. I realize that people grow, people change, and sometimes friendships change too. That doesn't erase the good memories. It doesn't erase the connection you once shared. It simply means life is moving forward.
That's such an important point. I think many people secretly blame themselves when friendships change. They think, maybe I wasn't a good friend. Maybe I should have tried harder. Maybe I did something wrong. But often, that's not the reality. The reality is that adulthood introduces new priorities. When people are young, friendship often sits near the center of life. But as we get older, other responsibilities compete for our attention. Careers, relationships, marriage, children, health, financial goals, family obligations. Suddenly, friendship becomes one part of a much larger picture. And while friendship remains important, it may not receive the same amount of time and energy that it once did. That doesn't mean the friendship is less valuable. It simply means life has become more complex.
Exactly. And something else happens too. As adults, we become more selective about who we spend time with. When we're younger, we're often friends with people simply because they're nearby, they're in our class, they live on our street, they're part of our sports team. Proximity creates friendship, but adulthood works differently. Time becomes limited. And because time becomes limited, we become more intentional. We start asking ourselves important questions. Do I feel comfortable around this person? Do they support me? Do I trust them? Do I enjoy spending time with them? Do our values align? Those questions naturally influence our friendships. And that's one reason adult friendships often become fewer but deeper.
I completely agree. When I was younger, I had a large circle of friends. There was always someone to talk to, always someone to spend time with, always something happening. But if I'm being honest, many of those friendships were fairly superficial. We had fun together, but we didn't necessarily know each other on a deeper level. As I've gotten older, I've noticed something interesting. I have fewer friends now, much fewer. But the friendships I still have feel stronger, more meaningful. These are more genuine. These are people I can call when life gets difficult, people I trust, people who know my strengths and weaknesses, like people who have seen me succeed and fail. And honestly, I wouldn't trade those friendships for 100 casual acquaintances.
That's such a beautiful realization because society sometimes sends us the message that more is better. More followers, more contacts, more friends, more connections. But adulthood teaches us something different. Depth matters more than numbers. A small group of genuine friends can provide more happiness and support than a huge network of people who barely know you. And I think many adults eventually discover that. The challenge is that the transition can feel lonely at first. When your social circle becomes smaller, it can seem like you're losing something. But often you're actually gaining something. You're gaining deeper connections, stronger trust, more meaningful relationships, and those things become incredibly valuable as life becomes more complicated.
One lesson I've learned is that friendship isn't supposed to remain frozen in time. People change, life changes, circumstances change, and friendships change too. The healthiest friendships are often the ones that adapt, the ones that survive distance, the ones that survive busy schedules, or the ones that survive different life stages, because real friendship isn't about constant proximity. It's about genuine connection. Yeah, it's about caring for someone even when life prevents you from seeing them every week. It's about picking up a conversation after months apart and feeling like no time has passed. That's the kind of friendship adulthood teaches us to appreciate. And honestly, I think it's one of the most beautiful forms of friendship there is.
I couldn't agree more. Maybe the goal isn't to keep every friendship exactly the same forever. Maybe the goal is to appreciate each friendship for what it is. Some friendships stay with us for life. Some friendships last only a few years. Some friendships become stronger over time. Others slowly fade away. And all of those experiences are part of being human. The important thing is to remain open to connection, to appreciate the people who are still in your life, and to understand that change doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes change is simply another part of growing older. We'll see you in the next episode.